Howdy, folks. Welcome to DojoTalks. Today, we are going to be discussing the state of U.S. chess 2022. It's October. The U.S. Championships has just begun. The first round took place yesterday. The second round starts in just about an hour. We figured it'd be a good time to discuss all things U.S. chess. We'll talk about the tournament, maybe make some predictions, talk about some of the up-and-coming juniors, and just discuss what it's like to be a chess player in the U.S. right now. Let me throw it to you guys. U.S. Championships, huge event. What's the biggest thing you're watching for?
I'm watching for, well, let's say okay, aside from watching for, whether Hans Niemann's gonna, win or not, I'm really curious just who's gonna win the tournament. I think that's one of the big things I'm interested to see here. And then secondarily, I'm always watching the young players. So that would again be Niemann. I'm also curious if Chris Yu can do anything yet this year. And that's something we can talk about more later, but I'll pass it to Jesse.
Yeah, we'll definitely talk about the more political aspects, let's call it, of the tournament. But some of my questions have to do with, let's call it, the aging set of the favorites, right? So I've been a big fan of Fabi for a long time. Fabi recently has fallen from his peak by far, and the question is, can he come back? And one of the curious things about Fabi right now is he's starting for the first time to dedicate a lot of his time to subjects which aren't directly chess. He's doing like podcasts and stuff. He's engaging on social media in a way he didn't used to. And so it feels, right, like he has lost at least the kind of approach that he once had. And arguably, this all started when he stopped working with his trainer, Kazim Janov. So that's like that's the big thing I'm watching for at the top. I wonder, too, about Aronian, like how these guys like old, dude. Aronian's old, man. How long is he going to last? And I think So's been playing the best recently. So I'm going to go ahead and say that's my pick for who's going to win the tournament.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we're already making picks. Oh, wow. Okay.
Already got a pick.
I was going to hope that we have like a lively discussion and I could have
okay
more time to think about it. That's an interesting point you brought up, Jesse. Yeah, like Fabi, I feel like he's been having some fun recently. And going into like, some of like the creative content side of chess. Clearly seems like, he's had a lot of thoughts about this whole cheating thing, and he's talking about this guy that he knows cheated but like wasn't caught. And so like, that's clearly, I think he's clearly happy to be able to express himself now about this. And like Levon has been struggling for several months now, it seems. So right, it feels like Wesley's like the only one that's kind of like really, really solid at the top. But it also means people have a chance otherwise, like Dominguez, Shankland. I think all these guys actually have a shot now, because it doesn't seem like anyone is just super invincible in the event. I also was thinking, like, I don't think it's impossible for Niemann to win. Like if he plays well and other players are kind of like, weird and nervous like playing against him, and he just starts like building up wins, he could win the thing, which would definitely kind of turn the craziness up to a 12. I don't. Do I have to give a pick yet?
No. That was just Jesse throwing all the information at us. But your question to us had been what we were most looking forward to, so you could answer your own question, like what's sort of the most interesting story that you're watching specifically from this tournament.
Well, I mean, for me, the most interesting story is, of course, just like what's going to happen with Hans, with this report that was just released, and just things being very kind of still like unsettled. Like Magnus still, like, his statement is kind of waiting out there. It does look like Hans isn't really gonna say much, which is absolutely fine. I don't know what he really needs to say. It's like it's clear he cheated online, and I'm sure he maintains that he's never cheated over the board. So that's that. But generally, I mean, I just love this tournament because it's just always so exciting. Like I've been watching it like literally every year for like over 10 years, just like religiously. And it's always fun to see like the 2600s go up against the top guys. So I'm like super happy that like Christopher Yu is there, a Wonder, Sevian, all these like young players. I think it's great when they're given the shot. So the tournament for me is just very, very interesting in terms of the chess itself, and it's always very hard actually to even pick people to root for, because I'm rooting for like multiple folks. But that's what I'm watching for. I mean, I love the tournament itself, but yeah, in terms of like which story I'm following, it's just like what's gonna happen to Hans now. I just can't stop watching.
Yeah. Yeah. I think one of the big stories of what's going on is that it's become harder to pick who's going to win. Like Jesse gave a very good reason for Wesley. And I said that, other than Hans, the main thing I'm watching for is just who's going to seize this thing and win the tournament, right? But what we have is a proliferation of this unofficial Super GM title, right? We've got a proliferation of Super GMs in American chess right now, because in the past, you only have to go back a couple of years and there would have been a big 2 or a big 3 favorites for the tournament, right? I mean, at some point it would have been Fabi or Naka, and then it was Fabi, Naka, or so. And now, of course, Aroni and Dominguez joined that conversation, but it's not just, the federation switches. We've got other players coming up, right? You've got Hans Niemann, who's 2,700. You've got Sevian, who hit 2,700 this year for the first time and tied for first in the last U.S. Championship. So to some extent, somebody was asking me who's a dark horse. I don't know if Sevian would even count as a dark horse anymore, given that he's tied for first in this thing before, right? You've got Ray Robson on the highest rating of his life. He is now slightly less than 10 points away from 2,700 for the first time, right? And you've got Shanklin and Xiong, who both hit 2,700. So you have, like half the field are super GMs. And if you extend it down to 2,690, you'd have more than half the field are super GMs. And I think it's just a much closer battle because of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's already been reasonably close. Like Lenderman, I remember, had like a really good run a couple of years, despite not usually being a favorite. So yeah, it does end this tournament so long. It's like 13 rounds. So it's like someone can just get way out ahead and just solid and cruise their way kind of to victory. We'll see. How about the women's section? Generally, I usually root for Tatev myself, because she hasn't won one, and I just like really would like to see her win one. She's been close like just so many times. But there's also quite a few juniors there. There's the dojo's Sophie that hopefully we're all rooting for as well.
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah,
100% behind her. If I could pick somebody to win the tournament, would be in a heartbeat.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool. And yeah, the women's event is always very, very interesting all the way till the end, and the games are very, very interesting. And also, as a player of like around like 2,400 level, I find the games more relatable. Like, oh yeah, this is a position that I could get. This is a position that I can mess up. So I would find those games actually to be a little bit more down to earth. Like in the round 1, the Rook End game with Jennifer Yu and Zatonsky was very, very interesting.
Definitely.
Yeah, really enjoyed watching
especially since you spend your time doing endgame sensei. Like very, very relatable.
I was like, oh wow, I've seen this before.
Well, Tatev is off to a good start after round 1. She drew an interesting game with Irina, and Carissa didn't show up for the tournament. So it's already a good start for Tatev's chances of winning her first U.S. Women's Championship.
Yeah, for me, that's always like the disappointing thing is that there's often like one or two players missing from the field. Like last year, I think Jennifer Yu didn't play, if I remember correctly.
That's
Yeah,
correct.
this year Carissa's not playing despite being the defending champion. Like her tournament last year was quite amazing.
Yeah.
So
We're missing Annie Wang, who we also missed last year. So yeah, there's several players who sort of like they sort of I don't know about peaking, but they get to a really good level just as they're going off to college, and then they take a little break.
Yeah, is that the story with Carissa?
I think that's the story.
That's terrible. That's terrible. Skip college. What are you doing?
Yeah, college has been the bane of American chess for
it used
a couple
to be.
decades.
It used to be like when I was a kid. Yeah, people would be like going off to college and stuff, and then they would lose it. But now we got a lot of, at least on the men's side, people not going to college. I think Jennifer Yu also went to college. So yeah we have this.
But a Wonder went, for example, a Wonder has played very, very little for the last 2 years. I mean, by rating, you look, and if you just look on the rating list, you'd still say, oh, who are the most promising juniors in America? You'd be like, oh, Hans Niemann and then a Wonder Liang, but a Wonder hasn't played for 2 years.
Right. Well, I don't know if that's fair. I've seen him at some events, and also, I mean, there was the pandemics, there was fewer chess, and I saw him play online quite a bit.
By his standards, I mean, I've even talked to him, about it, and he said, like, yeah, I'm by his standards, he himself says he's barely playing.
Oh, okay.
No, there's a lot of kids we're losing. I mean, but we lose so we have so many top juniors, honestly, like. It's incredible,
Well, I don't blame them. I mean, especially some of them are getting into like Stanford, Yale, Harvard, like some real top schools. I mean, that wasn't exactly an option for me. So, yeah, I don't know if it was. Yeah, I don't know if I would have been playing so many events.
Like, let me just throw out a couple names from a couple of years ago, actually. So, John Burke, that guy's amazing. Brandon Jacobson, amazing. Andrew Tang, amazing. And a name who also went to college, that guy was amazing, is Nicholas Cheka. That guy was strong.
Yeah.
Super strong. And he still is, but they went off to college.
Yeah. That's true. That's true. Well, we'll have another episode one day where we can argue whether college or chess is a better choice.
Yeah,
I don't think it's really about the college. I mean, I think like Wesley So, if I remember correctly, he made 2,700 when he was in school at Webster. So I think it's still depending on whether like college is like the main priority for you or whether chess is the main. If chess is the main priority, I think they can still do it.
Yeah, sure. It's the way some athletes, make it to the NFL while being in college. It's like what was the focus?
Yeah, you go to Webster, boss. You're not like, it's exactly like you're on a football scholarship. You're not actually going to school.
No.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, well, some of the names you mentioned, like John Burke, I think he's at one of the Missouri schools. I don't remember which one, but so that means we still have a chance.
One thing I wanted to bring up that is just kind of interesting. So let me just step back a second. Ages ago, me and Bruce had this discussion. This is like 10 years ago. Like, who do we think is the up and coming kids? And then how would we decide? How would we know? And we had kind of a vigorous debate about it. We threw throwing different names around. And what's interesting about that discussion, looking back on it, is in our field of vision at that time was Christopher Yu, Sevian, and Niemann. We knew all those kids. They were all from the Bay Area. And I had played against all of them, at least whether informally and I had a lot of lessons with Christopher Yu. I thought, let me just back. I thought Christopher was the talent by far. I was like, those other guys were just, and Sevian was interesting. And then Niemann, I was like, no, this kid doesn't have a shot. So that was my take on it. And one of the things I want to say about just intellectually interesting is I think it's kind of like when you're trying to judge those things, it's kind of like political punditry, i.e. like the political pundits, when they talk with incredible confidence and they believe what they're saying, but they're just wrong. They're just like wrong all the time. Same thing with like economic pundits. They're just historically wrong. Like you can do a track record of all of them, and they're always just like flip of a coin kind of wrong. And I guess it's kind of similar with guys like me and Proust trying to judge young talents. Like we really think we know. I think we earnestly think we can spot talent, but then it's like kind of like the political pundits. Political pundits know a lot. Like they've read a lot of political books, they've studied the stats, they've studied polling. You know, they know a lot more than I do, but they're just wrong. They make their guesses, man. So I think, anyways, that's just kind of interesting, and it kind of feeds into the scandal a little bit with Niemann as well, because Niemann wasn't anybody's. No one thought he was special as a kid. You go back to that 2019 U.S. Championship, U.S. Junior Championship, where I was doing the commentary too. He finished almost near the bottom of the table. All those other guys that I just mentioned were ahead of him. So that's the other weird thing about judging talent, right? And one of the reasons, like, it's kind of been a scandal because no one judged Niemann to be this incredible world-breaking talent back in the day. So that's part of like why we have this really incredible divide in the chess world right now, right?
Let me just say, I was scared of Niemann all the way back when he was like 11, 12 years old.
Yeah, same. You're saying like no one, but I don't know. To me, he looked like a talent. And I heard Greg Shahade saying, like, you know, he invited him to the U.S. Chess School because he thought he was a big talent. Like, his rating wasn't actually like high enough when he first got his invite, but Greg thought he was had a lot of potential. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's interesting. I'm totally with you on Christopher Yu. I think that kid has always been having a ton of potential. Sevian is a bit older than Christopher, but I remember Sevian when he was 6 years old playing in California, and he was like really low rated. And you can tell that he was very, very serious about the game. I mean, I definitely thought he would become a GM at some point. I don't know if I thought like, 26, 2700, but I definitely thought like, he's going to be really, really good. I think it's a little bit different with predicting talent versus predicting tournament results. I think like with talent, people can often, you know, see it, right? Like people were definitely talking about Magnus and Karyakin for several years before they were like really, really big and like other top chess stars. And I think it happens in other sports too. You see an athlete in like high school or college that's just amazing, and you just know that they're going to be great essentially. But then when it comes to like predicting like a tournament, it's like, okay, anything can happen over the course of 2 weeks. That's where I think it's like the pundits have to like portray a false sense of confidence, because I mean otherwise it's just not fun. Like everyone realize like there's no way to predict what's going to happen in a tournament, right? But you might as well make bold predictions, because otherwise like what's the fun? Like that's
well, I don't just mean about one tournament. I mean, like, you know, how are they going to turn out as a player? Like, for example, here's several names I got wrong. Robeson playing in the tournament now, you know, he's doing great, but I thought he was going to go much higher. Nagy, I thought Nagy was going to go much higher. I thought back row, I was certain.
He could have, but like he came to the US and bought into our whole school thing. You know, when he was in India and you know his family was like, forget about school, Pari. Everything was great, but then he came here and he started doing school. So
yeah, but then, you know, back row didn't do school, and that kid was amazing. And it was like the positional understanding the kid had at a very. Anyways, there's like all these cases where I was wrong, where I was wrong. And some of them are weird and interesting. Like, for example, one of the things that I think we would be talking about if this scandal weren't going on is, where is Naka? Dude, Naka was the great American talent. Was the great American talent. What are you doing, buddy? You're doing some streaming stuff, and now Fabi's like looking over at Naka. He's like, oh, this is looking good, man. Maybe I don't have to study chess. Maybe I'll just go to the streaming lifestyle. And of course, Naka was so weird because the kid didn't have a conventional chess education. In some ways he did, but, you know, he deliberately like didn't want to do it. He was playing blitz all the time, you know, yada, yada. And so it's like he had so much talent, like he ended up being a good player in spite of himself. You know, in spite of himself, he ended up being a good player. Now we're getting this, where the guy's not even here. He's not even here at this tournament. But
I think Jesse, it's because he's always been neurodivergent, you know? And so like from the blitz games to the streaming to now, you know, it's all just because he's neurodivergent.
They're gonna get you for saying
That's
that.
a
They
joke,
were on me.
everybody. Yeah, please
They were
don't.
on me for that, dude. They were on me.
A lot of anyway, yeah, that is a bit of a shame that Naka's not playing. I mean, I kind of get it from his perspective. It's like classical chess is such a grind, right? I mean, you have to like really prepare, and then if you show up, and then a player like him, if he doesn't do extremely well, you know, everyone's gonna thrash him for being a streamer, and like there's a lot of pressure on him and all this stuff. I don't know. It's still a bit of a shame though, because clearly, like he's so capable of being a top player. Like in the candidates, he had some great games. His game against Fabi, for instance, that he won with White is just like one of the best games of the event. Just period. It's like he can clearly, I mean, play at an incredible level. So it would be nice to see like him battling it out against like Fabi, Levon, So, Dominguez, Shanklin, like all these guys. But I mean, I get it. I feel like he's been there, done that. You know, he's already won a couple of U.S. championships, and it's like, I just feel like, I don't know. From his point of view, maybe he wants to move on to bigger things. Like with Magnus in the World Championship, he's already won it multiple times. Now he wants to do even bigger things, like get to 2,900, just reach a level never before seen. Naka seems like his ambitions are with like, you know, online chess, streaming, kind of building his career out that way. So I get it, but yeah, it is a bit sad from the classical perspective.
Yeah, I mean, not much to add to that. I would love to see him play just like both of you, but it's just a matter of, you know, ambition, interest, you know, what's fun for him. I mean, as somebody in chat is saying, like the thought of having to go on Twitch every single day and like talk on Twitch, like that could be a grind too, right? So there could come a time, although he's been doing it for a while and he seems to enjoy it, but there could come a time where that becomes a grind and he yearns for something different. But I think, you know, right now it's like Magnus with the World Championship, right? Like classical chess is not that fun for him. It's not appealing. And he probably really enjoys things like Title Tuesday, you know, Rapid Chess Championship, Global Chess Championship, some, you know, Rapid and Blitz events are probably a lot more fun for him. And so he, you know, spends his time on that.
Yeah. Well, it means other players get a shot, which is good for them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I feel like we had like maybe one U.S. championship where like all this like top players, there's always someone missing. Like Naka was missing, like Fabi I think missed one or two. But yeah, now it's just like just insanely strong.
Yeah. As far as missing players, what about Gadakamsky? I think his like FIDE rating's high enough that he could potentially be playing these events if he wanted to. He's like 10 or 15 points higher than Dariush, who I think is sort of like the last rating spot in the tournament.
Yeah, Kamsky, as far as I understood from what he was saying, was that he's just like kind of semi-retiring from that like level of chess.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, like the exact reason. I know he's mentioned like he doesn't like preparing openings like super deep and at this level, which I think we can understand. And I also don't know like where exactly he's living, because I heard he like moved back to Russia possibly. Mm-hmm. I don't know where he even is right now, but he's streaming. He's streaming now and then, so yeah. So that's cool. And I see him on Twitter popping up occasionally, which I'm happy to see. I'm glad he's speaking up about stuff. He's been I think commenting on the cheating controversy a bit. Actually, that's a question we haven't really discussed yet. Like, there was talk of St. Louis like disinviting Hans from the tournament. There's talk of the players boycotting them. I don't think there was like real talk of anything like that, but there was like fans suggesting like, oh, maybe the players will do this, which I think is really unlikely. Yesterday, Tony Rich, the executive director of the club, he gave a short interview. I don't know if you guys saw it, but he basically said like, at this point, you know, Hans is still presumed innocent for OTB cheating, and that's just how they're going to proceed until FIDE or USCF, you know, tell them otherwise. So personally, I'm fine that they continue to let Hans into the tournament. He qualified, again, presumably fair and square. But what do you guys think?
Well, we're going to have to go deep into this. So I just want to make one quick statement about the state of US chess before we go down this dark road. Okay. I want to say that US chess right now is really in a transition state. And that we've been talking about the top, right? But let me just give you a sense of where I see it kind of where I like, for example, I'm playing a tournament this weekend and I look now at the list of pairings. And it's, for the most part, people I don't know. So it's this incredible turn has happened. I played for decades, and it was always I'd go to the tournament, and the open section would be full of people I knew. And even the lower sections, I'd be like, oh, I know these people. So like the demographic has fully shifted. So it's like a really interesting thing that's happened. Not just that there's a bunch of new people, but that the old guard has basically, for the most part, stopped. It's a very interesting thing that we're not talking about. Plus, the demographic is markedly younger and Asian, right? And kids that I just don't know, and they're good. And we're going to, like, in a couple years, I assume I will know who they all are, but it's just a completely new demographic. Also, I want to say, you would think like, oh, there's going to be more women now. At first, I was kind of seeing that, and maybe it's a little bit like maybe it went from like 4% women to 8%, but I'm even doubting myself there. Like in this tournament I'm looking at here, there's no women in the open section, right? So like that shift hasn't happened. It's definitely more numbers. Every tournament, at least locally where I'm going, there's definitely more numbers. The organizers have got like a ballroom that they've been using forever, and like it's too small. It's too small. So that you can see that there's been a visually, you can see that there's been a jump in the rate of attendance. Now, you guys might have something else to add to that, but I just want to say this scandal, it's really bizarre, man. Like I have a lot of non-chess friends here, or even acquaintances, distant acquaintances. And like everyone is like texting me like, dude, what do you think about this scandal? So the scandal itself, it's almost like a Fisher boom in a way, in that it's bringing, again, like loads of attention to chess all worldwide, but especially in America. And it's like, I don't know why this is taking off in the world outside chess in the way it has, but we just, in terms of the state of US chess, we have to say like, oh, this has turned into like a big news story. One of the few chess news stories that really like broke into the mainstream, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I guess it kind of like it happened the weirdest way too. It was like Eric Hansen made a joke about anal beads, then Elon Musk like tweeted it, and then it kind of went this viral. It was meant to be funny at first, but then the people then texting me, like my non-chess people, the chess list, they interpret it as a serious thing. It's not just some joke. It's kind of funny, haha, but it's like, wait, can you tell me about this, Greg? Can you give me some insight on the anal beads? And I'm like, oh, I don't know. But you contacting me, like distant acquaintances, my friends. These are not people I necessarily even hang out with. A lot of people, and they're like, can you tell me about the anal beads? And I'm like, oh, this story really broke. This story like went mainstream. So anyways, I just wanted to throw it out there because we do have to go into the weeds, but I just didn't want to lose focus like the bigger US chess scene.
Yeah. A few things there, Jesse, on the women in chess. I feel like, it's going to be years, right, before we see like a female player get into the Open Championship. Like, so I do think we're seeing a lot more female players, which is great. But yeah, until we see like a junior, like really talented, and then make their way into the open section, like I feel like that just takes years. But one name I don't think we mentioned yet, like Alice Lee, super talented. I think I could easily see her just getting very, very far. I think that's but she's young. I hate putting like pressure. I hate like naming kids where they're gonna like hear about it. Like I don't like putting pressure on them. I just feel like they should just have fun and just be talented and have fun, and then get to 2,700 plus. But yeah, in terms of the story, same as you, Jesse, I had people that I just either haven't talked to in years or haven't talked to period message me, be like, hey, like what's going on? I think it's because the story itself is actually very compelling, because it's not clear like what the truth is. It's not like, oh, someone got caught cheating and that's the end of it. Like there was this there was this like story in bass fishing about cheating just like a couple days ago that was like on Twitter, but I think that's just like already gone because it was just open and shut. These guys, they were caught cheating in like a fishing competition, and then it was like on camera. There's just no it was just black and white. There was no gray area to it. Where here it's like we don't know if Hans has cheated OTB. We don't know if he cheated at the Singfield Cup. Magnus thinks so. Other people think so. Half the world doesn't think so. So it's like very 50-50. And I think that's why it's such an interesting story to people outside the world, because people just want to know, like, they just want a resolution. It's like, you know, a plane that gets lost. Even if you didn't know anyone on that plane, you just kind of want to know, like, what happened to it? Like where did it go? And so people just kind of get obsessed with, like, well, what actually did happen?
Right, right.
But yeah, to me, it feels like it's definitely, I feel like it's not quite as big as like Queen's Gambit. Queen's Gambit, I think, was a much more positive boom that was like getting people back into chess. Here it's, I mean, definitely the attention hasn't been all positive. And I don't know if it actually has been getting more people playing chess. I feel like it's been pushing a lot of people away as well because of all like all the drama and controversy. Actually, I remember seeing on Facebook one of the names you mentioned, Jacobson, I think, posted something on Facebook how like he's just like done with chess because of like some of the latest drama. I think it was like a couple weeks ago, even hadn't even escalated fully yet, but he was just like, ugh, it's like I'm not into all this stuff. So it's been a very, very big story, but yeah, definitely not nearly all positive.
Right.
Yeah, no, a second season for the Queen's Gambit would have been much better.
You know, maybe as a comparable even, you know, because there is a school of thought which says, you know, all attention is good attention, whether it's negative or positive. But if you compare, like, let's say you look at the cycling world, you think about like the Lance boom, and then all the attention for like the Lance drama with the cheating. It was definitely a negative, even though it was so much attention. And the Lance boom was such a positive thing in terms of numbers growth in cycling, just, you know, everyday people. Like when I was talking about women, Kostya, I wasn't talking about like super, you know, genius women or something. I was just talking about people you'd see at a tournament. You know, what's the growth we're going to see there, you know? Anyway, so that kind of remains to be seen. The Lance thing, of course, is an interesting comparison because at the end of the day, he was a mastermind cheater on a level that no one could have possibly comprehended. And so in a lot of ways, if you imagine Hans as a cheater over the board, not online, it's easy to do, but if you imagine he was a over the board cheater, it would be like a mastermind level thing, right? It really would. It would be like there would be, because you would have to have a conspiracy, you would have to have advanced technology, you would have to have all these things going on at the same time, like Lance did. You know?
Well, yeah, I mean, especially if he did in fact cheat at the Singfield Cup, and if he's in fact cheating at like the U.S. Championship, I don't think it would take that much like crazy tech to cheat at like a random like open event. Like imagine like the World Open, right? It's just no security there. But but okay, I mean, a lot of people are saying that he did cheat at like these really high level events too. So that would require, especially with like all these scanners now. I mean, the 30-minute delay, like at this point, like I really don't even understand how it would be happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess let's get into it. I mean, well, I said already, I mean, I didn't really see a reason to disinvite Hans. Obviously, it's a very awkward and unfortunate situation, but yeah, until there's something shown OTB, I feel like he definitely has a right to be there.
Yeah, Jesse, what were the results of your poll? Because you asked Twitter whether or not the organizer should do anything. What did your poll tell you?
So let me just frame the story a little bit before I tell you about what happened in the poll. So it was interesting the way the storyline happened, because before chess.com did its epic release of 72 pages, they leaked the information first to Vice and let Vice tell the story. The way Vice framed the story was far more damning to Hans than the report itself, right? The report itself was not nearly as biting as the story was. And maybe that's just because the way journalists write. So I started the poll before chess.com, did their report.
Oh, Wall Street Journal, by the way. Sorry, Vice did the story about.
Excuse me. Yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. Yeah. We have So that's, by the way, two big journalistic enterprises talking about chess. It's part of the story. So I did. There was 36% said St. Louis should kick him out, and 39% should say that St. Louis should pretend nothing is happening. And the middle option was 24% demand his point of view. And by that, I just mean that Niemann should be forced to explain himself in light of the report. Now, one thing I want to say that is really...
say, sorry, I lied about the extent of the online cheating, but I didn't lie about the OTB cheating.
Well, at the very minimum, it looks like in the interview he did about his online cheating that he lied about the extent of it. And so St. Louis could have said, hey, buddy, listen, you at least need to clarify what's going on, because there's a big discrepancy with what is being said about how much you cheated here and what you said you cheated, right?
Yeah.
A fascinating thing that's happening in the chess community, and this is something actually we're figuring out as a culture, like in real time, is a consensus has been formed, especially amongst the fans. I think not so much against the GMs, but with the fans are saying online cheating simply can't be as bad as over the board cheating. And one of the key rationales I keep hearing over and over again from these people is it can't be as bad because with over the board cheating, you have to really have some premeditation, like some big premeditation. And, you have to have a lot more going on than just like clicking on your computer. And that to me is like, I think for me and David, it's like, oh, I don't know. I don't know. We talked a little bit about that last time, about how like I feel chess.com has encouraged the laxity of our response to people who cheat online. But that's been this fascinating debate that's going on now, where the divide is in a lot of ways like, oh, it's not so bad that he cheated online. Show me the evidence that he cheated over the board. Whereas for me, let me just say for St. Louis, I thought they were in a real pickle. I still do, where since the guy was convicted and then lied about it, or it looks like he lied about it, then I could have imagined St. Louis doing, either saying, no, you can't play, or demanding his point of view. And I could have also imagined players like So and Fabi Dominguez just kind of joining hands and saying, well, look, if the guy plays, we're not playing, or unless he explains himself, we're not playing, right? And that would have been effectively pulling a Magnus on a much larger scale, right? So I think there's a real tension there that St. Louis just is trying to avoid. They're just trying to avoid it. And, I understand why they're doing it. In a way, it's trying to make their lives easy by just putting a blindfold of it up to their eyes.
Yeah, I mean, I would guess that the players didn't, or not to any significant extent, didn't complain to St. Louis about Hans's participation. And I'm curious. I'm very, very curious what the players think, if they wanted to play him, if they didn't want to play him, if they thought he should be banned, if they wanted, if the presumption of innocence is important to them. It's easy for everybody on the internet to say, the presumption of innocence is like fundamental to society, right? But like when you have to go play for, $100,000 against somebody who you're certain cheats sometimes and you're certain is a liar, like when it's your livelihood, you might be like, well, let's put this guy in some probationary review or something, like you could imagine having a different opinion if you're actually one of the players. And the option I would have loved to see added to your poll was like, because I was thinking if I were the organizer, I would kind of ask the players, did no organizer ever, right? But I would ask the players, what are your thoughts? Do you guys want to play with this guy or not? And if you had more than half the players who said they didn't want to play with the guy, I mean, then just off of that, I would probably uninvite him. Because I don't know. There needs to be some kind of, willing. There ought to be some kind of willingness and desire to play with each other when people sit down to play chess. I know there's all kinds of rules and, ratings and prize funds and contracts and stuff like that. But fundamentally, when you sit down to play chess, you should be wanting to play chess with each other. And, people complain that Magnus by himself can just say something and ruin somebody's career. But, if 10 top players all agree that they don't want to play with somebody, that seems like something you wouldn't ignore.
Yeah. But okay, I think you have to be really careful there, because it has to be like, it definitely has to be, I think, for the reason of like foul play, because there could easily be a player that the other guys just don't like, and maybe he's like a little bit eccentric or arrogant, or like he like pulls stunts, he pulls like pranks on the players like outside the rounds, like they just don't like them, right? He gets drunk and he's like a jerk to everybody. They just really dislike this player. It's purely hypothetical, right?
Sure.
It's like they wouldn't have a right to be like, oh, we don't want this guy in our tournament because he's like, he kind of acts weird sometimes, right? No, it's only be because like they actually believe that a player is capable of cheating OTB, has cheated OTB in the past, and then they're like really uncertain. The way things stand right now, it's just like, I can understand them being extremely angry at Hans for cheating online, because he cheated in like some really important online events. But yeah, to me, there's still just like a very clear distinction there. It's just like, and it's not just that there should be a distinction, but that there has been a distinction. It's like online chess and OTB chess have been separate for the entirety of chess. There was never a time when they were like 1-1.
But either way, it would be interesting to know what the players think or feel, wouldn't it? I mean, shouldn't that somewhat figure into it, Kostya?
I don't know. Maybe, but it's like the tournament needs some kind of grounds, right, to kick the player out. So you can't just be like, a lot of our players feel uneasy about playing you, right? Because if it's related to cheating, like St. Louis, their official position is that they have security, right? Like there is no cheating at their events. Like that's what they're obviously going to put forward. So they can't like remove a player because they think like, oh, they might be cheating. It's like, what does that say about their security measures, right? It's like,
I mean, you could be not confident about your security measures. People don't have to always pretend that they've got everything under control. You could say like, people are concerned about this person and we don't feel like capable of ensuring fair play. And so, yeah, I mean, you can always say whatever you need to.
Oh, I do not think that would go down well with the fans if they're like, yeah, we're not sure if we can ensure like a safe tournament. So
it might not go down well, but it might still be, the honest thing to say in some situation.
Well, and let's just say the obvious. Like this whole thing started because Magnus unilaterally, might have been good if he had asked his friends, his fellow players, hey, do you want to do this with me?
Yeah.
This is all happening because Magnus threw down the gauntlet. And if you believe that it's cheating is a bad thing, if you believe online cheating is a bad thing, then you can at least understand where the guy's coming from. And furthermore, I don't think Magnus will ever play in another tournament that Niemann plays in. I think that's it. So I don't know. maybe Magnus will retire soon and Niemann can play the other big events, but otherwise, I don't think Carlsen's going to play. And, the U.S. players could have done a similar thing, but they didn't. I want to also just backstep a little bit and just make sure we're clear on the story, too. That's also is so weird here. Part of it was why it's fascinating to me is this is what it looks like. Okay, this is what it looks like. And I think there's general consensus this is what happened, though you guys could disagree. It looks very much like, chess.com, first of all, pulls Niemann from the Global Chess Championship. And this is post-Magnus. And of course, let's just backstep. Chess.com bought Play Magnus. So Magnus, in a certain way, belongs to Chess.com now. So it looks like they're doing it to favor Magnus. Is that true or not? I don't know. That's just what it looks like. Then what it also looks like is it looks like Chess.com was in contact with St. Louis and said, you should pull this guy. And then they didn't. And the reason it looks that way is they dropped this bomb of a report on the day of the opening ceremony of the tournament. So it's like, oh my gosh, that's really putting them on the spot, So it was like this incredible thing that chess.com did. And I think for the fans, one of the reasons like there's so much support of Hans in the chess community is precisely because it feels like he's being bullied by both Magnus and chess.com.
Mm-hmm.
And now that chess.com owns so much of the market share, it feels like they're the big evil demon, which maybe they're becoming. But in any case, that's how the chess fans see it. And so when I especially just like look at fans doing on Twitter, it's like a remarkable support of Hans and like willingness to go to the end of the world for the guy, you know. It's like this really, all these cultural things are coming together now where it's like, especially you got, if you just look, you know, person by person, are they a lead chess user or a chess.com user? The lead chess people are all behind Hans. And so what are we thinking? What does it look like? It's starting to look like a tribal affair, right? It's a tribal warfare being played out here, you know, between Hans and Magnus now.
Yeah. And Jesse, I think it's worth clarifying on that. A lot of these people might be all in on due process or presumption of innocence more than they are all in on Hans. Like a lot of them will say like, yeah, he seems suspicious. Yeah, he's a dishonest person. Yeah, he's a confirmed cheater.
Yeah.
You know, so I don't know that they would necessarily be all in on loving Hans or even be fans of his, right? But it's like it's some mix of them maybe hating chess.com or maybe loving due process, loving the presumption of innocence, that kind of legal framework, right?
It's definitely a mix. I would just want to say on that, it's like I feel like this is all Magnus's fault. Just typical like Magnus, like because well, Hans was already a divisive figure before all this happened because he had that like chess speaks for itself. A lot of people were calling him arrogant. Others were saying like, oh, he's the best thing for the sport. And then when Magnus drops this accusation without hard proof before this chess.com report, you know, is even existing, of course, people are quick to defend Hans because it's like, oh, where's this all coming from? You can't just accuse someone and just immediately convict them based on you not liking them. So I just want to say with this chess.com report, I can imagine they wanted to release it before the US Championship as like a deadline. I don't see this as them like vindictively like dropping, because how much time have they had to come up to create the 72 page? It's not like they were expecting to have this report ready until Hans like publicly kind of went after them, right? Because it was Hans that was like, oh, chess.com, they disinvited me. Like he's the one that made the whole thing public. And I can imagine at that point, then they were like, well, now we have to show our stuff.
Dog, they did it hours before the opening ceremony. Just hours before. It was like, oh, dang.
Well, yeah, to me, that looks more like... They had it ready 3 days ago and sat on it, Jesse?
Yeah, to me, it looks like more like a deadline.
I'm just telling you what the optics look like. I'm just telling you what it looks like. You
know? No, but I know there are optics, but I find that every attempted conspiracy theory about chess.com is like really silly looking. Like, I think it's really silly. All this stuff like Magnus, like, you know, made them do it, or they're trying to ruin this guy's career. To what purpose? They clearly tried to protect his career years ago. Danny tried to like coach him on how to be an honest person. You know, he really held his hand on that one.
No, it kind of looks like they were not sure about having him in the GCC, but they wanted him there because he's a big star. But then when this stuff happened with Magnus, then they were like, uh-oh, we already know about his cheating past. And now Magnus is taking this huge... When I saw that Magnus tweet, like that he's withdrawing from the tournament, like my stomach like sunk. I was just like, wow, this is a big accusation that he's making, right? I'm sure chess.com folks felt the same way, and they immediately started reconsidering. But I don't know. I was definitely on the side of... I definitely thought that they did talk to Magnus about it at some point before, you know, both sides said that they never talked to each other, because it does seem natural. Like they have this big deal going on, then he makes this like huge thing. I mean, it feels natural that they would discuss it at some point. I don't know if they did or not, but back to what Jesse was saying about the report. It's like, yeah, it definitely feels like Hans is being scapegoated a bit by Magnus, because Magnus withdraws after losing the OTB game, and then people are saying like, oh, it's a stand on online cheating. It's like, no, you don't play a normal OTB game and then lose, and then you take a stand against the online cheating. Like that doesn't that doesn't make any sense. So it has to be about the OTB. And I still think it is about the OTB because a lot of these like top guys, they're like analyzing Hans's games, like Fabi, Naka, Nepo. They're looking at his like OTB games that they're actually suspicious of. So I feel like this goes beyond just like the story of, oh, is online cheating, should that be taken as seriously as OTB cheating? Which I think it should be.
I think when we try to apply logic and predict things, we often miss less plausible explanations, which are overall just as likely to explain what happens in the world. Like Magnus could have been conflicted about whether or not to play an online cheater and like sort of teetering on the brink of it, you know, and then he played the game and just got pissed, you know, and sort of like was balancing on a fence between two options and sort of tumbled off into one. And it might not have had, you know, sometimes the logical explanations are not the real explanations. That's all I want to say. I want to open the possibility that, you know, these things can be really random or reasons we haven't thought of.
No, but going off of Magnus's statement, like he specifically said, like during the game, Neiman wasn't focused, and this game like changed his like perspective on playing him. You could be right. Could have just been an angry. He was definitely very angry after losing that game. So you could be right. But okay, based on his words, it sounds like he's crying foul play. He wasn't saying like, oh, during the game I realized I shouldn't have to play someone who's cheated online. He was saying like during the game Hans doesn't seem focused. That to me feels like a direct accusation that he's cheating during the game because he's playing super well. He's beating the world champion. Very few players can do this, you know, according to Magnus, and he doesn't seem focused. So obviously he's implying he's receiving the moves, right? Like,
yeah, totally. I'm just saying, like, imagine how angry you've been after some games you've lost, right? Like your subsequent actions within the next couple hours after losing a chess game, like may or may not be logically predicted by somebody else.
No, I think I don't have any trouble with your interpretation. I mean, it was definitely a spur of the moment thing, but we got to also say that part of Magnus's decision is this, what's come out is that while you have the fans who believe in Hans's innocence or have a thing with innocence until proven guilty, the top players in the world, for reasons that I'm not entirely clear on, but I know this to be true, the top players of the world are pretty consensus on Hans having cheated over the board. Now, is that proof of anything? No, but for them, there's a consensus at the top that he was cheating over the board. And all I know is there's some suspicious looking things. I don't have any proof or anything, but for them, it's just like this clear divide where they definitely felt it. Obviously, Magnus is at the top. He's the apex predator of that little group, you know? So he's going to be reacting to their feelings about it right there, right on the spot, right?
I don't know if we can say it's a consensus, but it's definitely several top players that seem to think Hans has cheated over the board, seemingly including Magnus. So it is significant people and players who would, you know, they kind of know about chess. Like, they might not be right, but of course their opinion, I think, should be valued quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, you have to understand these people prepared to play him, right? They were in a round robin with him, right? So they did like a kind of preparation that's a totally different kind of, you know, deep dive into somebody's games. So the opinions and ideas that they would have after looking through Hans's games, those are incredibly valuable insights or opinions.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's like, you know, apparently the stories of Hans have been going around for some time. They knew as they were preparing for him that he has a history of online cheating, right? So that can also like cloud your judgment. I think anyone's judgment, if you're looking at games and you're thinking, you know, this person might have used an engine during these games, it's like as soon as any moves start matching up with the engine, you know, your mind just starts drawing conclusions. It's just very natural and I think very, very hard to avoid, regardless of the skill level, which is why it's also super important to have these like very robust statistical models that you know I don't understand how they work, but they use math and they seem, you know, if they're like sure about someone, it's like they're 99.999% sure. It's just like very, very very, very powerful figures. So yeah, ideally some kind of combination of those two. Like the top player intuition, like this is human, this is not human, this is 2600 play, this is 2750 play, versus like just like cold statistical analysis.
One thing in chat that was said, I think, is an interesting result of this whole fiasco too, is they're asking like, well, is there going to be a FIDE report? And one of the just funny things for me, even that, is like people are now demanding that FIDE do things that it normally never did. FIDE, oh, no one trusted FIDE to do some report before. You kidding me? That thing has been a corrupt shell organization for decades, and now we're going to entrust it to do something real. But maybe it has to. Maybe it is going to be called upon to like do something like substantive. And do I trust it to do it? Not really, but I guess they're going to have to, you know. And if anything, places like chess.com have the resources to do like the crazy statistical analysis and yada yada. So it's almost like they're the ones in the position to do it in the first place anyway, you know. So there is no governing body in my mind which can take this over and like make some big decision, which is maybe something, something like FIDE is going to be forced to do.
Yeah, but I mean, what decision can they really make, outside of just really strong evidence that someone cheated or, flat out confession? It's like...
Well, one of the things that the fans want is they want Magnus to be penalized. And I think that might happen,
Some fans want that. Not everyone wants that.
There's some strong feeling out there, my friend. There's some very strong.
Those who feel it definitely have strong feelings.
I think that's just the world now, Jess. And I think it's just the world that has kind of infiltrated the chess world. As the chess world has grown bigger, it's just merged with the regular world. It's just the state of things nowadays. It's like people want statements, people want punishments. People, they just get outraged over stuff on the internet. It's like, this didn't used to happen. Like 5-10 years ago in the chess world, people were not like demanding statements left and right and like all this stuff. I think it's just the consequence of everything being connected. But yeah, there are definitely some very vocal minorities out there saying like, oh, this player and that player should be punished. I personally don't know if Magnus should be penalized. I don't even understand what kind of punishment they could give him.
Well, exactly. It's a false accusation punishment.
What are they gonna do? Kick him out of the world championship? Like what?
I honestly think there is, first of all, FIDE has started doing stuff now, and there is going to be some kind of report, and they could prevent him from playing for, I don't know, 3 months or something. I don't know, something. I think it's a legitimate possibility of what the outcome of this thing could be.
Can I pull us back to our topic for today for the last 5 minutes?
Yeah.
So, state of American chess. Let me ask you guys just a couple little questions about U.S. players. So, I want to start with Ray Robson. Do you guys think that this guy can still make 2,700?
Yes, easily. He's so close. He's like 2690. It's one good tournament away.
Yeah, and like I said before, it's like, let's say 2008. To me, he was going to be a rival for U.S. champion or for the World Championship. So it's kind of like, why didn't that happen? I don't know, but yeah, of course he can make 2,700.
Okay, cool. What about upcoming talents like Chris Yu? What do you think? Is this somebody who's going to be super GM one day? Is this a hope for us to increase the number of American super GMs? Are we headed towards 10?
Let me just say, just a quick story about Christopher Yu. I did a camp in Berkeley ages ago, and Christopher Yu was 5 years old. He just won like the Californian kindergarten championship. I kid you not. And we do Polgar Mate and Twos with a bunch of other kids, and I would put him one up on the board, and kid was lightning. There was kids in there who were 10, 11, rated kids who played tournaments for years, and he was slaying them. So I experienced talent firsthand in a way it was very rare for me. I then did we did some classes over there at Berkeley Chess School with like some 2,200 players, and he would come along with his dad there, and yeah, very talented. So I always thought that he was going to crush it, and it's cool now to see that he's getting first of all, a chance, But there was a period of years where he was kind of stagnant. I definitely think COVID didn't help him. So that's definitely a storyline I'm following. Yeah, because for a while it looked like I was like, oh no, I was wrong. I was wrong. And I'm like, no, I want my intuition to be proven right.
No, he's definitely one of the kids that got a bad hand from COVID. He was like on track to be like the youngest US GM, and then COVID hit. He needed like one more norm, and then like all his tournaments got canceled. I mean, like I think he would have he had like months to make it, you know. But yeah, Christopher, I think he's super talented. I mean, I feel like I don't know exactly what's going to happen with classical chess over the next several years. But I think he has very good chances of making it to 2,700. I think even more likely is that he's going to become at least a top online player because he's already just doing amazing things in online chess. So I feel like that's going to continue, and he's just going to be like just easily one of the world's best online players, period. And maybe I think he'll also do very good things in classical. But to me, that's less of a given because that's a lot of time and energy.
Yeah, you raise an interesting side question, which is like, are we going to start losing OTB talents to online chess, right? Because what you'll notice, one thing in the correspondence between Danny and Hans is that Hans was wavering between trying to have a career as an online chess player or trying to have a career as an OTB player.
Yeah.
Right? Like he wasn't sure which was going to be the right path. So, you know, when we were young, we'd look at somebody like, you know, Gary Kasparov or Vishy Anand or something like that would be like the kind of chess career or player that would be sort of a dream. And now a lot of people might be looking at Hikaru Nakamura and saying like, well, maybe that's the right path. Do you guys think that in the next 10 years we might lose, you know, 5 or 10 lose, so to speak? Sorry, that OTB might lose 5 or 10 top talents to online chess?
And let's just say the hilarious point of the story too is from the correspondence, what it looks like is the kid, i.e. Neiman, stopped playing online and started playing classical because he was banned. Because he was banned from online, he was banned from chess.com. That's when his career took off on classical chess.
Right.
Yeah.
But I don't think classical chess will ever die, my friend. No, I don't think so.
Which what you just say is why to me it's not crazy that Hans is like legitimately a 2,700 strength player, because it's like he gets kicked off of playing online chess. He's like forced to like study OTB now, and using like his like prior like talent from before, he's able to kind of catch up to where he could have been if he was like working hard the whole time. Yeah, you know, I think we might have already lost some OTB talents to online chess, or at least people spending a lot more time working on their online skills compared to working on their OTB skill, because just the online is more lucrative. I think it's not an insane path for players to take, especially the way things are going. I feel like we're going to have regular prize money events online, and it's cheaper to play online than it is to travel to a tournament. And it's also much faster, and I think a lot of people prefer it too. So yeah, but that said, I mean, I think OTB is still very much thriving. Like tournaments are still really strong, and I think getting good numbers. But yeah, I'd be happy if both online and OTB were good avenues.
Yeah, I think they will be. You know, the question is, would some people really prefer one and not spend their effort and time into the other, right? Like the kind of decision Hikaru is making now. You know, I'm not saying that OTB chess would die, but to me, if you look at the economics, if you look at that there are multiple $1 million to be won in online tournaments, right? Like Global Championship, $1 million, Rapid Chess Championship, 500,000. You know, like once you've got 3 or 4, 5 events on the calendar that have these kind of prize funds, it seems natural that you'd have people who would focus on pursuing them. And I don't know that going to an OTB tournament is even like very good training if you want to win a 10+0 online tournament over 10 rounds, right? Like you might be better off staying home and streaming rather than traveling to the US championships.
Yeah, absolutely. People in our chat mentioning another kid. I just want to give a shout out to Andy Woodward, very, very talented junior.
Oh yeah.
I've played him twice recently. He crushed me both times.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about him at some point today. So,
yeah, no, he is very, very talented for sure. I remember him from like a World Cadet like years ago. He was like just a very, very young kid, but already super strong. Now he's close to GM strength already. He'll definitely be in this tournament in a year or two.
Yeah, born
a
in
year or
2010.
two?
Hey, two
Born
or three.
2010. Yeah.
2 or 3?
2 or 3.
It might be sooner or later. He's already 24, 54, born 2010. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty impressive.
His trajectory, I think is very similar to like Christopher Yu, but maybe even faster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And playing him and meeting him, he seemed just as strong as the rating and the rise indicate.
Yeah. No, very nice kid. He's like friendly, jokes around. No, he's it seems I see only good things for him in the future.